Okay, everybody, today we are going to learn a little bit about fonts. With SFML, SFML lets us do really a lot of things, but one of the big things it lets us do is it lets us put images to the screen and it lets us put text to the screen as well. And the thing that's kind of interesting is because it's a library, it tries to do things pretty consistently. So when we're working with images, we sort of create this sort of blank box that's a sprite, that's kind of a container for, the things that we want to hold, which are in fact the images. So here we go. So we have this kind of blank box that's a sprite, and then over here we have the texture, which I'm going to write kind of small. And the idea is that this sprite, we attach the texture to the sprite, and then this, if this texture is, let's say, this little stick figure, then this sprite's going to look like this stick figure, okay? And if I make another sprite called sprite2, I can assign that texture to this guy, and they'll both look like this stick figure. And we know that's going to be the case. Because things are consistent, the world of text objects works exactly the same, okay? I make a text object in SFML, okay, and I give it a name. This is, my text, and this is my text too, right? So that's their variable names. And these guys are containers for a couple of things. So first, we're going to set the font, okay? So we need to set the font, which is going to work just like our images. Okay, so we're going to load a font from a file, and then we can assign it to all of our text objects that we want. And then later on, we're going to change the properties of our text object. So we're going to give this specific words that we want it to display, or we're going to set its position or change its color. So that's kind of the general strategy about what we're going to do today. So let me just kind of show you how that works in code real quick. So let me pop on the projector. And so just keep this idea that we're sort of making a container and then we're assigning things to the container. So we don't have to include anything extra to do the fonts. They are drawable graphics objects, so we just include graphics like normal. And you'll see here that I made a font and a text object. So I'm going to zoom in on this. It's a little easier to read. So we're going to make a font and a text object. So the font is just like our image when we work with sprites. Our text is just like how we work with our sprite. So first thing we need to do is we need to actually load the font. So we're going to use this command, which basically says font load from file, and then we give it the file name. It's really important that our font is located in the same folder as the rest of our stuff. So you'll see here, I have my font example CPP file, and in there, I got my Arial true type font. Now some of you guys might be wondering, well, where do I get fonts? There's lots of places you can go online to get fun fonts, but probably the easiest place to get fonts is if you click on My Computer, you go to See Windows, you go to the Windows folder. There's actually a folder called Fonts where all the system fonts are. So you can just grab one of these out. I usually rename them to be something simple, because Bauhaus 93 regular is a little bit long to type in and there's spaces and stuff. So I might copy it into my folder and call it like BH3 or something like that. So then you get a font that you like and you want to use, and life is pretty good. So why do I have a little knot here, just like the image, is that I want it to, if it doesn't find the font, I want it to tell me it didn't find the font. So this returns a true false statement. Okay, so if it found the font, okay, then I want to do not that, so that'll end up being false, which means it'll skip this if statement. If I didn't find it, that returns false. I want to turn it to true, so I put the little exclamation point in front of it, and then it goes in here and it says I didn't find the file. Cool. So that's just a nice little thing to help troubleshoot you a little later. Okay, so once I've set up the font, that's all I got to do with the font. It just lives there. I can assign it to any text object that I want now and not have to worry about it. So now, how do I actually do that? Well, here's a little block of commands that are going to be sort of our best friends here. So first, I'm going to take my text object, and I'm just going to do, unsurprisingly, set font, and give it the name of the font. Not the file name of the font, but the font object. Okay, so now they're paired up. Okay, now I can go in and I can set the string. Okay, once I set the string, I just put in any string. I could use a string variable, I can use the quotes, whatever that is, I'm assigning that. I can set the character size. That kind of works like if you're familiar with Google Docs or Word or something like that. You know, it's like a weird sizing scheme, so it takes a little bit to figure out exactly how big that is. So you'll play around with that because it'll be a little bit different, like physical size on the screen depending on which font you use. My text.setColor, we can use just like any other of the shapes or things we've made. We can give it a specific color. In this case, I chose red. And then we can set it to any position on our screen. Okay? Then it's a drawable object. You notice like these are all the same things basically, you know, that we did with shapes, right? We set its color, we set its position, and then finally we're going to draw it just like we did all the other shapes. Hey, look, window.draw my text. Okay, so it's all put there. It's really familiar to the other SFML stuff we did, so it's consistent. That's one of the reasons I like SFML, is it tries to get things very consistent, and I run it, and it pops up with a nice howdy folks. Okay, so just to recap, we're going to create two objects. One's for the font, one's for text. Then we're going to load them one into the other, and then we can assign it its properties. Now, probably the most common thing that I get asked questions for about using text is I want to show a number. Like you want to make like a counter, like a score counter for a game or something like that. Or one of the challenge problems is to actually like draw some numbers to the screen. So to do that, well, the numbers aren't in a string format. So we need to do a little bit of a conversion to get things into a string format. So I'm going to show you how to write a little function that'll do that for you. So we're going to use this thing called Stringstream. And let me just show you what we're going to do. So I'm going to make a new function, and it's going to return a string. And I'm just going to call it, you know, con to str for conversion to string. And it's going to take in a double as a value. Okay? And I'm going to take my prototype. I'm going to copy it down here. And then I'm going to actually write the code real quick. Now, this is a really handy way to convert things. You can actually use this strategy to build up like compound strings if you want to like make a sentence or combine a bunch of variables into one variable that are a mix of numbers and words. So you want to print out like your score is 52. You can use this same idea. So the first thing we want to do is we want to make a Stringstream object. Stringstream object, I'll just call it SS, it's basically like cout. So if we think about cout's a stream object where we send things in with the arrows, and we send in numbers and words and all these different things. As long as we send them with the arrows, they get to the console and they come out as text. Well, Stringstream is basically the variable, a variable type that lets you hold information the same way the console does. So what I can do here is SS, arrow, arrow, and I send my number into that. Okay, so that's great. I'm going to convert my number into this stream. So now it's stuck in a Stringstream object, which is not exactly a string. So what do I want to do? I want to return ss.str. And so Stringstream has a built-in function that lets us convert whatever junk we've shoved in there into a string, and then we can print it out. So now, if I want to go here, and instead of setting the string to be howdy folks, I'm going to use con to str and give it 3.1415. Okay, so that is definitely not a string at first glance, but hey, my little conversion turned it into a string, sent it back to my program, and I was able to set it up as a text. So we can use that. Hey, look. I could do something along this. Add in 2 more arrows. Your number is, put in a colon. Okay? Now when I run this here, oops, I made it a little too big because it's gone off the screen, but you can see here that I've appended these two things together. You know, let's switch over to your number and run it. Okay, and now you can see that I've combined words and numbers all together using that Stringstream feature. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. Hopefully that's helpful on your next few assignments. Thanks. Cheers.